In today's episode 4 of my series on running the Tarawera 102k, I'm going to talk a little bit about aid stations and drop bags. Before we get into that though, I'd just like to say thank you to a few people like Joe Benbow and Nick Allen and others. In fact, anybody who's either liked the video, commented about the video, asked a question either on YouTube or on Facebook itself. It's really, really appreciated. I've kind of got most of the answers, I think, for how I like to run 102k, but those may not be the same as everyone else's experience. So it's always good to have people saying, well, this thing worked for me, or what do you think about that? It just gives us all options of how to manage our own races in the way that's going to work for us. Running 102 kilometers is going to take you some time, and you're going to need to carry quite a lot of kit if you wanted to do that all in one go. So wouldn't it be great if there were places in the race where you could top up your water bottles, get some extra food, maybe go to the bathroom, and generally avoid having to lug everything the entire way through the race? Well, the good news is that there are such things. They're called aid stations, and there are 8 of them on the Tarawera course. So there is Mangawhio, Titoki, Outlet, Humphrey's Bay, Okataina, Millar Road, Blue Lake and the Redwoods. And they're kind of staggered anything from 10 to 16 or 17 kilometres apart through the race. Now, at these aid stations, it's a very good idea to have a plan, because if you spent 5 minutes at each of those aid stations, that's 40 minutes of time that you could have better spent advancing towards your goal, getting to the finish. So have a plan. And my plan for the majority of those aid stations is get into the aid station, top my water bottles up, and get the hell out of the aid station, because it's so easy to waste time taking a break or whatever. I may also go to the bathroom if I need to, but the idea is to just keep it going as much as possible and maintain the momentum. So you kind of want to have a plan for each of those aid stations, but you also need to have kind of an overall plan, because you've got the concept of drop bags as well. So you can leave drop bags at Outlet, which is at 42k, at Okataina, which is at about 58k, and then at Tikitapu, which is about 80 kilometres in, give or take. And a drop bag is just a bag, like this one, that you can leave certain items in, and they'll be available for you there when you run into the aid station. You get the items out, top, replenish, hand the drop bag back, and you go. So the way that they work is you need to provide your own drop bag. And so I use, like this was from the Queenstown Marathon in 2016. And you put whatever you want in it. So stuff you might want to consider putting in it is food. I use a mixture of gels and other things. We'll talk about that another day. Care parcels, like I talked about. It's worth having spares of those. If it's a wet day, you might want dry clothing. It's a good idea. I said previously that I probably wouldn't use poles, but if it was a very, very, very wet day, I might have them just in case. Those. Lube. Shoes, personally no, but maybe. But the whole idea is you're kind of putting things in there that either you know you're going to need, and stuff like food and lube would fall into that category, or things you might need if circumstances intervene. So, you know, if you had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the trail, you might pick up a spare care parcel just in case. If it's going to be a very soggy wet day, you have those things. So it's all about reducing the amount you have to carry in the race and de-risking things so that you can just keep on going and not have to worry too much about it. So you would have as many bags of these as you want as drop bags, and I think you're probably really going to need 5, because you can drop stuff at the start, which is really, really useful, because you might want to have a warm top on if it's a cold morning. Just before the race, you take your top off, put it in your drop bag, hand it in at the start, and then they will carry that to the finish for you. So that's quite useful. You'll want drop bags at the aid stations I talked about earlier, so at Outlet, Okataina and possibly Tikitapu. You'll also want one at the finish, because depending on if you've got people waiting for you, you might want to get changed into warm clothing very, very quickly. You might want to have a comfy pair of shoes, maybe some hand sanitizer, something to freshen up with, that sort of thing. Really, really useful thing to have. The way that drop bags actually work is you kind of go to the expo, and when you sign into the race, you'll get given your bib. You'll also get given a sheet of stickers, and there is one sticker for each place you can leave a drop bag. So in this case, you can see it's Blue Lake. You put whatever you want in that bag. You then stick the relevant label to it, and then there is a drop-off point at the expo that you can, once you've filled and tied up your bag and put the sticker on, you go and dump it. And then first thing the next morning or that night, they will go and transport everybody's drop bags, sort of 500 or 600 drop bags, maybe even more, to the relevant aid station. So when you come in, you'll go in, you'll see them all laid out, and you'll say to one of the volunteers, I'm race number 543 in this case, or whatever your race number is. They will go and get that drop bag to you, give it to you, you get out whatever you want from it, food, whatever, do your stuff, tie it back up, and then you'll hand it back and they'll put it in a used pile to be transported to the finish. So really, really useful thing to have. Now, a couple of notes about this. So the first thing is probably to say that I always think of Okataina as the halfway point, even though it's actually 58 kilometres into a 102k race, because that second half is quite a bit harder than the first, and there's quite a steep climb coming out of Okataina. So then mentally for me, that's the halfway place. So I tend to put all of my contingency gear in the drop bag for Okataina, whereas in the drop bags for Outlet at 42 kilometres and Tikitapu, really the only thing I'm putting in there is stuff like food, just so I don't have to carry the weight, because by a third of the way in and 80% of the way through, you've kind of done the vast majority of the hard things in this latter case, or you're just not far enough for there to be too many problems. So I always think of Okataina as the halfway point, and that's where I would put the majority of my contingency gear into a drop bag. The other thing to note is probably if we're talking about whether you have a crew or not, I'm quite happy either way. In fact, in some ways I prefer not having a crew, is your crew will only be able to come and meet you at either the Outlet or Okataina. Now, it's not because of rules or anything like that, it's just a question of logistics. Even for sort of back of mid-pack runners, the time it takes to get a bus to Outlet, meet you, get a bus back out of Outlet, get a bus to Okataina is going to be longer than it's going to take you to run, walk, whatever, at even a pretty modest pace between those two. So again, my personal recommendation is if you're going to have a crew, have them meet you at Okataina and Blue Lake. Don't have them meet you at Outlet. And that's a personal thing, because it's kind of an either-or choice between Okataina and Outlet. And like I say, Okataina for me is the halfway point of the race psychologically as much as anything else. Crew I probably won't talk about in this vid. We'll save that topic for another day about how to work with your crew, because it is quite a different skill, and people need to know what to expect and what's going to do to help you and not annoy you. I guess my final point is all of the aid stations are crewed by volunteers, people who've given up their day to help you have a positive race experience. So even though you've missed your time goal, you're not going to win your age group, you're not going to break 16 hours, whatever it might be, or you feel terrible, please be nice to the volunteers. They're there to help you. I've always felt that they're amazing, and so we need to respect them in the same way that everyone else would respect you as an athlete in the race. Hope your training is going really, really well. Hopefully this weekend, fingers crossed, I'm going to be running around Taranaki with my friend Kirk Bakes, who is similarly a finisher of the 102k and the 100-mile race at Tarawera. It's all a bit weather dependent, so we're not quite sure at the moment. Hope your training is going really, really well, and you've got an exciting race, event, training, run, whatever planned for this weekend. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.